Behaviorism. William McDougall, Instincts and Purposive Behavior. History of Psychology, Professor Mike Botwin, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. McDougall's work reflects many of the things that we look at in modern psychology, especially modern evolutionary psychology. In fact, some individuals believe he coined the term evolutionary psychology. He was a person looking at purposive behavior and conscious processes and internal processes during the height of behaviorism, when that wasn't really popular. He also did research in areas that garnered him great criticism, including parapsychology, Lamarckian evolutionary theory, and things like that. But he does set the pace for work on purposive behavior in modern psychology, and let's look at some of his contributions here. William McDougall was inspired by William James early on and always held him as a role model. He worked with Johannes Muller and was one of the founders of the British Psychological Association. He was invited to teach at Harvard and take the William James seat, which he took from Munsterberg, but always liked to think of it as taking on William James's legacy. In the last part of his career, he moved to Duke University. McDougall is the individual who defined psychology as the science of behavior. He was a strong believer in the heritability of behaviors and eugenics. In fact, his belief in Lamarckianism got him in trouble with some individuals who criticized that effort. He wrote one of the first textbooks in social psychology, and, like William James, was a pluralistic methodologist, using whatever technique he thought could profitably study the complexity of human behavior. McDougall was interested in purposive behavior, something we've talked about in other contexts before, and he makes several important points about purposive behavior. First of all, it's spontaneous. It does not need to be elicited. Purposive behavior just happens, and it's an internal state of the organism. For example, hunger leads to purposive behavior, and hunger does not need to be elicited. For McDougall, purposive behavior persists for a relatively long time and only terminates when the goal is obtained. This is different from a straight one-to-one reinforcement model, or what Tolman would call molecular behaviors. Purposive behavior persists even when environmental stimulation is lacking. If you're hungry, you're hungry. It doesn't matter whether you're in the classroom, your car, at home, or anyplace else. And when you're hungry, you're going to engage in the purposive behavior of attempting to find something to eat. Only natural. Behavior may vary as the environment changes. The goal of purposive behavior does not change. So you might do different things in different environments. For example, if you're studying for an examination and you're on campus, you might study in the library, you might study out on the lawn someplace, or if you go home, you might study in your room or on your living room couch. No matter where you're at, the goal of purposive behavior doesn't change. You get better with practice. And according to McDougall, trial and error learning is purposive. We persist at things through trial and trial and error learning. It's an easy error to make, I guess. And he believed that learning is purposive. We do it for a reason, a goal-directed kind of behavior. It's not simply reflexive. Now let's talk about McDougall's notions of instinct. McDougall believed that purposive behavior was stimulated by something that amorphously is called the instinctual energy of the organism rather than the environment. In other words, instinctual behavior is a characteristic of the organism, not of the environment. He believed all organisms were born with a small number of instincts that provide motivation to act in a certain way. And by certain ways, McDougall is definitely talking about goal-directed, purposive behavior. McDougall believed there were three components of instinctual behavior. The first of those is perception. And in perception, an organism will attend to stimuli related to the satisfaction of the active instinct. If you're hungry, you're going to be attending to the smells of food, the taste of food, the texture of food, and maybe you'll ignore other stimuli in the environment that are irrelevant to hunger. The second component of a McDougall instinct is behavior. And an organism tends to the task that will lead to satisfaction of the active instinct. So, with McDougall, goal-directed behavior leads to satisfaction of an instinct, a reduction in hunger, for example, by satisfying the active instinct. The behavior of an organism is goal-directed or purposive. So behavior in the instinctual mode is going to be goal-directed, moving towards satisfying or taking care of that physiological internal condition. The third component of an instinct, according to McDougall, is emotion. Organisms will respond with the appropriate emotion to the environmental events related to the instinct. And these may be dependent on whether the goal is satisfied or there is a failure to satisfy the instinct. If you don't get enough to eat, you're still going to be hungry and you're going to feel some kind of emotion with that, whether it's sadness, anger, whatever. But the emotional component is an important part of instinctual behavior, according to McDougall. William McDougall was ahead of his times, and some of his ideas about instinctual behavior, purposive behavior, and instinctually driven behavior, especially as it relates to evolutionary processes. He worked during the height of behaviorism, when it was very unfavorable to talk about internal processes and states. One of the things that McDougall is most remembered for is his debate about psychology with Watson. And they debated whether behavior was totally conditioned or was, as McDougall posited, instinctual. McDougall won the vote as to who won the debate by a narrow margin, even though Watson's work remained far more popular at those times. It seems like no matter what McDougall did, he just couldn't win one. That was a clear victory. So I guess looking back, I can see why he was a little bit acerbic. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And one of my main mentors, Professor Bill Fossey from Ag, used to always talk about how everything in life was timing and footwork. a few years later, McDougall might have been an even more important driving force in cognitive psychology. He definitely influenced later researchers like Edward Chase Tolman, so he left a legacy that is still with us today. Bye now. This has been a We Have Couches video production, copyright 2020, Professor Michael Botwin. All rights reserved. But I think you instinctually felt that one. Bye now.